Ladies and gentlemen, today in fly.com.gr, we have the pleasure to have with us Mr. Larry Gallogly. He's a Director of Air Mobility Customer Requirements in Lockheed Martin Aeronautics for domestic and international customers. And of course, he's retired of 30 and more years of career in the United States Air Force as a colonel, and he was a commander in the 143rd Airlift Wing for many years, and of course, an action pilot. So thank you very much for being here with us today, Mr. Gallogly.
Giannis, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
We are also looking forward to for this because actually, you see, many of our readers are always asking more for airplanes like cargo and airlift in total, because you know the fancy thing in the Air Force is always the fighters, and sometimes we leave matters behind regarding something that is very crucial for the support of the Air Force, which is actually the airlift commands. And of course, we are here to talk about, to my opinion, for the most famous airplane, the C-130. Tell us some more info and insight for this fantastic aircraft that is flying for more than 60 years. Give us a short brief for the whole program since its beginning.
Yeah, certainly, Giannis. It is a very illustrious program, and as you mentioned, it has now been in production for 70 years. And I must be getting old because I have flown the airplane for over 30 years, retiring in 2012 when I joined Lockheed Martin. As you know, the venerable C-130 first flew in 1954. When Lockheed was awarded a contract to build 2 prototype aircraft at the time that went on to become Hercules as we know it today. And since that time, while it might have been very humble beginnings, we have now delivered over 2,700 C-130s to operators around the world. And on the C-130J, the latest variant, which I was very fortunate to fly from 2001 until 2012, we now have 638 of those aircraft ordered, and we've delivered 563 of them. So it is a long and illustrious history. The question I get asked the most, Giannis, is how is it that the airplane is still in production after 70 years? And quite simply, it's because it's not the same airplane. When we look at the C-130A models that were built originally, and then of course, you're very familiar with the C-130B models that the Hellenic Air Force still flies today. Then we had the E models and the H models, and now the J models. I look at it and say, this is the 5th generation of the Hercules. And that's why it stays in production, because it has evolved over all of those years, and we're always putting new things on the airplane and finding new ways to utilize the airplane.
So, well, the numbers are quite impressive, especially for the latest model. So, what is actually what are the main differences and of course the advanced abilities that make the J model totally a new aircraft compared to the older ones?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because I will be honest with you, having flown the older airplanes, I was not one that was very enthusiastic about getting brand new J models. But once I started to fly those, I realized how much actually had changed with the airplane and how much better it was and how much easier to fly and easier to maintain it was. Of course, the most obvious thing is that there are fewer crew members on the airplane. You have just the two pilots and a loadmaster. There's no longer a navigator or a flight engineer that we did have on the older airplanes. That helps in the cost of operating the plane. But it's really indicative of the changes in technology that we've brought into the airplane, so you don't need the navigator and the flight engineer. You've let technology kind of take over. The other differences you see, and I think this is overlooked a lot of times, but the aircraft that we are now delivering to air forces around the world, with the exception of special operations missions, has always been the C-130J-30, which is the version that is 15 feet longer than the original C-130. And why that's important is because the U.S. Air Force did a study on tactical airlift and medium-sized airlift aircraft like the C-130 and others that are out in operation today. And they found that the airplane fills up the cargo bay far quicker than it reaches its maximum weight. So when we stretched the airplane and we gave it those 15 extra feet, now we can have 2 additional pallets in the main cargo compartment. So if you look at the Dash 30, we actually can carry 7 pallets in the main cargo compartment. Those are full-size pallets, whereas the other aircraft that are in the same size category only carry 5. Now, we can also put a pallet on the ramp, but that's not a full-size pallet. That's a restricted height pallet. Mm-hmm. And the other aircraft that are in the same category can also put pallets on the ramp, but they're restricted in height as well. So you look at 7 full-size pallets in the cargo compartment compared to 5. That's a very, very big difference. It makes us that much more efficient. And you also can cut down on the number of aircraft that you have to assign to any given mission. And you know, you were kind enough to mention that I was a former commander in the Air Force, and when I was the commander, that was a very high priority for me, was how many airplanes, how many air crew did we have to operate on any given mission. So that's a big change, the size of the aircraft, that I think goes unnoticed. The other thing that I think goes unnoticed is how fuel efficient the airplane is.
Well, I was going to ask you about it because one of the most important things regarding economy actually is the efficiency of the engines.
That's absolutely right. To just give you a rough idea, you've seen, I'm sure, the C-130s that have the external fuel tanks under the wings. The J model, the J-30, does not have those external fuel tanks under the wings. And the reason is that the airplane is so efficient, it goes just as far as the older airplanes without all of that gas that was included in those tanks. So it's tremendously more efficient. And that's the beauty of a turboprop engine. And when you compare the turboprop engine to, say, a turbofan or jet engine, if we compare ourselves to the other aircraft in our class, the engines themselves are 42% more fuel efficient per hour. So when you think about how much it costs to operate the aircraft, that fuel cost is a huge part of that.
So should we also expect, I believe, improved speed or improved flight ceiling? I mean,
yes, you can. The aircraft, obviously, it flies higher, and it flies faster than the legacy airplanes did. I will tell you, so now, we've got a max speed of 365 knots now, and we have altitudes above 30,000 feet, which is really different than the old aircraft had. But Giannis, for the C-130, for medium-sized airlifters, we really don't operate at our top speeds that much, and we really don't operate at the highest altitudes. We do when we're transiting from one place to the other, but when we're in areas of conflict and high threat, we're usually at very low altitude, where we have the most protection, and we're flying kind of a medium speed at that altitude. It's where the propellers operate very, very efficiently. If you have a jet engine, the lower you go, the less efficient the engine actually is. So we operate very, very efficiently at the low altitudes, as well as have the ability to get up into the higher altitudes.
Mm-hmm. Well, Greece, as we all know, has specific needs. Actually, we need new transported and cargo airplanes. We've used the older, as you mentioned, versions. We have the Bravo model and the Hotel model, of course. So what is your proposal regarding Greece's needs? For example, how many airplanes are we going to need to replace the older ones? And of course, is there any specific proposal regarding funding or the participation of the Hellenic industry in constructing some components of the C-130J?
Yes, a very good question, Giannis. I have had the pleasure of spending a good bit of time with the airlift unit at Elephas, and spending time talking to their crew members and to their commanders about how they operate the airplane, how the B's and H's have been working for them, and looking at the missions of Greece specifically, because all countries are different. And when we look at how Greece utilizes their airlift fleet, the J model, in my opinion, will allow tremendous efficiencies over the current fleet, but also over all different options. And you have a fleet of 15 airplanes now, the 5B models and the 10H models. When we look at the way the missions are flown, what you normally carry on your missions and what you normally do with the aircraft, we are confident that with the much higher utilization rate you get from the J model, and how much easier the aircraft is to maintain, that you will be able to operate with a fleet of between 6 and 8 aircraft as opposed to 15 aircraft. So when you think about that, you think about how much that will actually save the Hellenic Air Force and the Greek government in the cost of acquiring and then maintaining that fleet. It's quite substantial. And the nice thing is that as a traditional C-130 operator, you don't have to go out and buy everything new. There is a lot of commonality in support equipment, in parts on the aircraft, et cetera, between particularly the H models and the J models. There is a lot of commonality. So you've already invested in a lot of the support equipment that will be required for you to operate the J. Now it's a brand new airplane, so certainly there are going to be certain systems that you didn't have on the H models that you will have to have support for. For example, the propellers are very different propellers. You have support for your current propellers, but the new ones are a composite propeller. Some additional support will be required there. So I don't want to give anybody the impression that you can do everything with all of the old equipment you have. You will certainly have to get some new equipment, but there's a large amount of commonality between the planes. So you have already made a lot of the investment required to operate a J model fleet, which makes it very, very easy. It also makes it easy for the crews to transition from the H models and B models to the J model, because they're accustomed to operating C-130s, the C-130 procedures. They learn the new airplane, the new cockpit setup, et cetera, and they're ready to go. As far as support within Greece, Lockheed Martin in general, and not just for the C-130 program, but Lockheed Martin has had a very, very strong relationship with Greek industry, and that relationship will only continue to grow with the addition of the J models as we look for in-country solutions to help with the maintenance and upkeep of the airplanes as desired by your government.
Well, if I recall right, Hellenic industry is already somehow involved in the program regarding components and some materials for the J model. I mean the Hellenic air industry. Am I correct?
You are correct. We currently produce portions of the aircraft in Greece. And have enjoyed that very, very close relationship. And that relationship will only grow in the future as we bring on more and more J model customers. Giannis, we didn't say it earlier, but the J model alone now has 23 countries that have purchased the J model. So, and there are 29 different operators of the aircraft. That continues to grow throughout Europe, and that is just greater opportunity for the Hellenic industries that currently support the airplane.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the number of the planes you mentioned that are required to be bought from Greece are I think they are somehow relevant to also the ones we use for less cargo needs. I mean the C-130J, which is, as you already know, I believe, a two-engine carrier aircraft, and somehow it has some commonality also with the C-130J. I mean, the engines at least are somehow common. So I see here a very big commonality, and of course in the MRO section, as you mentioned. Should we expect in the FAA 2025 a specific proposal? Should we expect something more for the program and the involvement?
Well, what we are doing, Giannis, is we are staying in touch with the Hellenic Air Force and being responsive to their needs. As you know, the services are building their budgets and setting their priorities. And we have been providing information about the airplane, information about the time it takes to acquire the airplane, and things like that, as requested by the Hellenic Air Force and the government. We plan to continue to be responsive to the Hellenic Air Force and the government as we go through the process and see where the C-130 and mobility aircraft are on the priority list. The beauty of the is that, we mentioned that we are confident that you can conduct your missions with 6 to 8 airplanes. You don't have to buy all of those airplanes at once. For example, you could buy 2 airplanes a year, start operating the J's, and just build the size of your squadron very, very easily. So we will try to find ways to fit in to both the priority of the government and the budget that the government has. And whether or not we will see any further requests in 2025 remains to be seen. We, I think, as you know, are always in contact with the Air Force to get the latest. We work through our embassy with the government as well to get the latest priority listing and provide any new and updated information about the J model that we can.
Well, one question about that is, how fast can for example, if Greece decides to buy the airplane and decides to make a procurement of the first 2, how fast could Lockheed Martin deliver these 2 airplanes?
Sure. It normally takes just over 3 years from contract award to delivery of the aircraft, and that should be the expectation going forward.
Mm-hmm. So, well, actually, it's quite fast regarding, of course, the size of the airplane. And I had a specific question, which is back from Flying Week, from our first meeting, if you can recall. Well, I had a specific question from a reader of our magazine and, of course, a website, which was, please, if you meet again, Larry, tell him if he could share with us a specific story from his flight career, and especially how do you operate with such a big airplane over hot zones? How is it?
Oh, and by hot zones, you mean hostile environments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very unique for a large aircraft to operate in a hostile environment. And as I said, I have, having flown for 30 years, have had the opportunity to operate in many such areas. How we do it is we've got now state-of-the-art defensive systems on the airplanes. So defensive systems that will, if we have missiles fired on us, we will detect, and we have chaff and flares on the aircraft to distract the missiles. As I mentioned earlier, altitude is our friend, and we will normally be flying in those hostile environments at very low altitudes. So we do that to avoid detection, and if we are detected and fired upon, then we're looking for the terrain to kind of get behind terrain and put that terrain between us and the enemy. The very interesting thing about the aircraft is its durability. We have, in one particular mission that we had flown in Afghanistan with the J model, when my unit took the aircraft into Afghanistan for the first time for the U.S. government, the airplane had taken fire along the route, and the crew did not know they had taken fire until they got back on the ground at their home base, and there were holes in the wing, and there was some fuel leaking out of the holes. And that shows you how the airplane was designed for this environment. We have suppressive foam in the wings, in all of the fuel tanks. So if we do take what we would call small arms fire, AK-47s, machine gun fire, rocket propelled grenades, etc., it's not going to impact the aircraft significantly, unless, of course, there was that, golden opportunity where it hit a strategic component of the aircraft. But in general, this airplane can take hits and continue to keep flying. But we have all of the state-of-the-art technology to avoid any of the higher threats that we might engage in. And I could tell you many, many stories of where the airplane has taken fire, but also where the airplane has supported ground troops that were engaged in a ground firefight in delivering much needed ammunition for them to continue that fight. And that's really where the airplane makes its money. Is we come in very, very low. We can drop cargo at very low altitudes. We're dropping ammunition, we're dropping food, we're dropping anything that the friendly troops might need on the ground. And then, of course, we have the ability, and we haven't talked about it yet, but we have the ability to take off and land from incredibly short airfields, and they don't have to be prepared airfields. They can be dirt, they can be grass, gravel. We've taken off on, they can be ice even. We've taken off on all of these surfaces so we can get in and we can evacuate people as necessary. If there happened to be a natural disaster, for example, when the tsunamis hit Japan, they did not think they were going to be able to utilize their airport to bring in support equipment to help the recovery efforts after the tsunami. Well, they looked at the runway and they said, well, a C-130 can use this small section of the runway that wasn't damaged, and they can start to bring in all the equipment that's necessary for a greater recovery. And the C-130s did that. We do that kind of thing all of the time. When we had Hurricane Katrina in the United States, very, very near and dear to our hearts here in the U.S., I had the privilege of flying the third C-130 to go in and land at Navy New Orleans, which was the airstrip we were trying to open up. And there was no air traffic control. There was very little on the ground, but there was enough runway where the C-130s were able to get in there and bring people, bring equipment, bring all of the things that were required. So that's what I really love about the C-130, Giannis, is in my entire career, I have flown the airplane in hostilities. I have flown the airplane in humanitarian relief missions. I have flown the airplane in search and rescue missions. The airplane is so versatile and again continues to reinvent itself, which is why we're now up to that 5th generation of C-130.
Well, it's quite impressive because, you know, sometimes the fighters are the most substantial part of an Air Force until something is needed to be carried or someone needs help. And of course, we always look above to see the wings of an aircraft that carries the relief or the help we need. And fortunately or not, in Greece, we had this blessing to operate this aircraft in significant difficult times. And of course, I'm referring many times for the wildfires, because in Greece we have a lot of wildfires. So the C-130 always helped to carry whatever it was needed. And I know what you mean when you say to natural disasters. And of course, the Greek audience is also familiar with that. So should we expect to see you also in the Fair 2025?
I certainly hope I will be back to visit in 2025, and planning to come back for Athens Flying Week, if not other times. This is a big year for Greece,
Yes.
Giannis. This is the 50th anniversary of operating Hercules aircraft. And that shows you how long and strong the relationship is with the Hellenic Air Force and Greece itself. So we're looking forward to a bit of a celebration for 50 years of C-130s, and look forward to celebrating that with Greece as well as with the crews that are operating the aircraft today.
Yeah, that would be great. We're expecting for that. So, Mr. Gallogly, Larry, thank you very much for the interview. Thank you very much for sharing with us all this info. And we expect more things to come. Thank you again very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Larry Gallogly from Lockheed Martin with us here today. Thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.